ESPN dropped an article that featured 5 players that could request a trade from their current team. And they're all superstars, by the way. I want to react to them because they're players that we've talked about in the past, but there's also some different players that also need to be mentioned on today's show. But make sure you are following me over on Twitter at Nic_Rohloff, Twitter/X, whatever you want to call it. I'm tweeting about the NBA every single day, and if you want more content surrounding the NBA on a daily basis, well, guess what? My Twitter is the best place to find it. We don't put daily content out here on Chat Sports, but there will be daily content over on my Twitter. All right, number 1, Brandon Ingram, the forward from the New Orleans Pelicans, which is funny that he is on this list, by the way, because it's trade requests, right? And it's heavily rumored that the Pelicans already want to trade Brandon Ingram. Yes, he has not formally requested a trade, but you do see New Orleans kind of moving on from BI, or at least they want to. And I don't know if I see a resolution on Brandon Ingram soon for the Pelicans. If he were to be dealt this offseason, you would have imagined it would have already happened by now. Ingram, going into the final year of his contract, wants a massive payday. Reports are indicating that he wants to be paid more than $50 million per season, which, sure, Brandon Ingram is a really good basketball player. He knows how to score the ball. There's no denying that. But when you think about what you can allot money to in today's NBA CBA, I just don't know if you can give Brandon Ingram $50 million, which is what he wants. And you would have to trade for him, lose assets in the draft and on your own team, and then pay him that massive, lucrative contract. Like I said, I think he's a third player. He's a third fiddle. He can be a great third option like Chris Middleton. But guess what? Chris Middleton ain't making $50 million. He's making mid-30s. Like, that's where I think he needs to live. I think he could live in the OG Anunoby space as well. He got 42.5, I think, this offseason over 4 or 5 seasons from the New York Knicks. If Brandon Ingram asked for that, I think he would get his money. But asking for $50 million, being paid like a supermax player who can lead a team, be a top 2 option on a championship team, that's what he wants. And I just don't see that being the case. And right now, I think New Orleans kind of needs to look to move on from Brandon Ingram. There's a lot going on over there. DeJounte Murray, CJ McCollum, Zion Williamson. But then you also have these wings waiting in the wing with Herb Jones and Trey Murphy, who I am very, very high on. It's one of those things where, like, the Pelicans might really blossom as an organization and as a team if they get rid of Brandon Ingram because it frees up more of a role for Trey Murphy and Herb Jones. It might be one of those rare cases you get addition by subtraction in New Orleans. All right, number 2 on ESPN's list was Zack LaVine, which this one's kind of a head-scratcher for me. Not because I don't think he could be traded, but the reason why this one really caught my attention is because, 1, Zack LaVine is not requesting a trade. Just like New Orleans, in a sense, with Brandon Ingram, Chicago is doing everything in their power to trade Zack LaVine. So there will be no requests coming from Zack LaVine's camp, and they also labeled this list as like a superstar that could request a trade. At this point in his career, Zack LaVine ain't no superstar. He's a very good player who at one point was on the verge of being a superstar. Like in that 2020-21 season, before Lonzo Ball got that knee injury that has kept him out for 3.5 straight seasons, looking like he's going to return, by the way. Shout out Lonzo Ball. They were the number 1 team in the Eastern Conference. LaVine was putting up all-NBA type numbers working alongside DeMar DeRozan and Lonzo Ball. And then the injury happened and everything went to crap. And then we saw LaVine battle injuries himself during that 2020-21 season near the end. Obviously last year missing almost the entire season, but he wasn't even having that good of a year prior to that foot injury. LaVine's contract is also very, very scary, getting paid $45+ million each of the next 3 seasons with a player option 4 years from now. It's a lengthy, massive contract that not many teams want to take on, and I don't think that he is going to be traded anytime soon because his value just isn't good enough. All right, let me know, though. Name that guy. Are you that guy, pal? You that guy? What star player gets traded next in the NBA? Star player is a wild word, but if I did have to like gun in my head, make a prediction, I'd probably go Brandon Ingram. Maybe it's Trae Young, and this one would be intriguing because this would be a little bit of a stunner if Trae Young requested a trade, because it actually was possible that Trae Young was going to be dealt this past NBA offseason because they had to decide, and they being Atlanta, between Trae Young and DeJounte Murray in terms of their roster construction and roster building for the future. They ultimately decided to go with Trae Young and trade DeJounte Murray to New Orleans. I don't think Trae requests one. I think he really likes it in Atlanta because at least right now, he is going to have the ball in his hands a lot. He's going to have to make all the decisions. He's going to get to play make, shoot a million times a game, and just absolutely play his style of basketball. I don't know if that style of basketball ever will translate to winning. Probably say it won't. But, I mean, he's someone that is really talented, man. He can really score. He can really play make. He's actually probably, at least to this point, him and Tyrese Halliburton, the best assist man in the NBA. They just know how to use and leverage their shot making and driving ability to get other open looks for their teammates. We'll see how he does as the lone guard now, because without DeJounte Murray there anymore, well, now maybe Trae Young is going to be able to play even more, because Young was really good prior to DeJounte Murray getting there. I'm not saying that he was bad with DeJounte Murray, but it just never seemed like a good fit because they really never knew who should have the ball in their hands and stuff like that. It was still primarily Trae Young, but it took away from DeJounte Murray's impact. And whenever Trae Young missed time with injury, that's when DeJounte Murray was at his best. So it's interesting to me. And I've a long time thought this. I think the Atlanta Hawks should just blow it up, man. This team is not good. They have a long way to go. They took Zachary Risachet with the first overall pick, which is an absolute disaster because I don't think he's anyone deserving of a first-round pick. He could be a fun, good player in the NBA, but someone that taken number 1 overall, heck no, I'm not in on that. I think they should trade Trae Young, just full rebuild around Jalen Johnson in the draft. I think that's what the Atlanta should do, but that's just what my thoughts are. Today's show is sponsored by Prize Picks, the #1 daily fantasy sports app in North America, because it is just so easy and it makes watching sports so much more fun. It's so easy to play. All you do is pick more or less than 2 to 6 player stat projections, and you can watch the winnings roll up to 100 times your money. Yes, you can turn 10 into 1,000 with as little as 4 correct entries with Prize Picks. More than 5 million people play it on a daily basis. I am one of them. And the reason why I like it is because you could go across all different sports. You can do basketball, football, baseball, golf, fighting, hockey. It does not matter. You can play it your way. You can go season long, daily. It doesn't matter. I actually have a season-long projection for basketball coming up here. More than 9.9 rebounds per game for Bam Adebayo. More than 6.8 assists per game for Jalen Brunson. And then less than 2.2 or 10.2, points per game for Zachary Risachet, the #1 pick from the Atlanta Hawks. I'm just not that much of a believer in him. So join me and the millions of others playing Prize Picks on a daily basis by downloading the app and using code CLNS to get a first deposit match up to $100. That's prizepicks.com/CLNS. That link will be in the description and comments of today's show. Just make sure when you create that account, use code CLNS to get a first deposit match up to $100. Shout out to Prize Picks for sponsoring today's show. Prize Picks, run your game. Moving on here to Jimmy Butler, the forward from the Miami Heat. Could he actually request a trade? I'm not so sure that's the case here. And Jimmy Butler's time in Miami could be numbered. That is absolutely the case. The truth on Jimmy is, though, he will not request a trade, but he could opt out and enter NBA free agency next year. Because what he wants is a supermax 2-year contract. Because the way the new CBA rules is that you can't give someone a supermax past their age 37 season. And with Jimmy Butler being 35 coming up here before the season begins, he can't get a supermax contract beyond that. But he does want to get his money. He can get a 2-year deal worth up to $113 million if he gets his 2-year guaranteed supermax, which is what he wants. And I don't think he's going to be able to get that right now. But could he opt out and do it in next free agency after a career year if he plays really well for Miami and plays in 65-plus games? I think that is a realistic scenario for Jimmy Butler. He wants that supermax. I don't think he's going to request a trade, but enter free agency next offseason? Absolutely. Make sure you hit that sub button, because if any of these guys actually do request a trade in the NBA, Chat Sports will have you covered on those NBA news and rumors. Hit that sub button right now if you want to stay locked in with the best NBA coverage. Darius Garland is the 5th and final member that ESPN had for the trade request players. Garland, interesting player to make this list because, Well, you might be wondering to yourself, didn't he already request one? Not formally, but kinda. With the whole Donovan Mitchell saga, before Donovan Mitchell committed to a long-term deal in Cleveland, the Cavaliers got word, or Shams put it out there from Darius Garland's representatives, that if Mitchell commits long-term, they'd likely request a trade. Now, ultimately, after Donovan Mitchell did stay with the Cleveland Cavaliers, we haven't seen a Darius Garland trade. But I actually think it would make sense for Cleveland to split these two up. I don't think that backcourt works because when you think of the NBA landscape, you simply don't see two undersized guards who don't play good defense work together. And I don't think there's anything different there with Mitchell and Garland. They both don't defend. They both need to have the ball in their hands. Like, we saw how much Garland struggled against the physicality and defensive team that the Orlando Magic was this past playoffs. Like, I don't know. Maybe I'm just lower on Garland than others, but I don't believe a Garland-Donovan Mitchell backcourt can work in this Eastern Conference with other teams having good defenders and physical players like Boston, like Orlando, like Philadelphia, like New York. I just don't see it, but maybe I'm getting proved wrong. Be the GM, though. Be having a nice thought. Will Darius Garland be traded away from the Cleveland Cavaliers? Type Y for yes or type N for no. Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section. You can also let me know your thoughts over on Twitter /X. At Nic_Rohloff is my handle. If you have any questions around the NBA, comments, concerns with anything I said on this show, go let me know over on X/Twitter at Nic_Rohloff.